That's the only way you can get it done, okay? So what we're going to do next is we're going to complete now the last page in your manual, which is page number 19, I believe. Criminal Offenses Part 2. I'm going to select some of these terms, okay, and discuss some of them. Were you able to hear me? Luisa Ramirez. No, I couldn't hear Luisa Ramirez. I mean, I could hear initially, but the mic starts and then the mic is not very good quality. You log in correctly, it's just the equipment issue. So you will still get a link, I believe, but it will tell you that the mic, and you can hear what the problem is once I send you the link, Luisa, yes. So the next time I will monitor you is when I give you to all of you, hopefully everybody, otherwise you won't pass this course, you need to be monitored one-on-one in the final examination, okay? So if there was an issue with your mic, for example, in your case, Luisa, make sure you check it, okay? All right. Okay, so let's look at this. Driving on a suspended, this is very self-explanatory. Driving under the influence of alcohol, we don't want to say bajo la influencia. In Spanish, influencia es una persona tiene influencia en otra. Pero el alcohol no tiene influencia en una persona, tiene efecto. Cuando uno toma un medicamento, el médico no le va a decir, vamos a ver si tiene alguna influencia, sino que le va a decir, vamos a ver si tiene algún efecto. Because it's a drug or it's a chemical that is affecting you. So influencia exists in Spanish, but it is, José tiene mucha influencia en Pedro, which is a very different meaning. So it has to be bajo los efectos del alcohol y o drogas. In drug dealing, please change tráfico to venta de drogas. Where it says drug dealing, it should say venta de drogas. Please make a note of it. Embezzlement is desfalco. That means that you use someone else's money to make money yourself, illegally, of course. And usually you embezzle a company, or sometimes you may even take money for a period of time and then return it. So it's not necessarily robbery or theft, but rather it is an embezzlement, okay? You don't have to study encroachment, so don't worry about that term. You don't have to study environmental offenses. Exhibiting firearm in the presence of a peace officer is exhibir un arma de fuego. It says here de un arma, but it should be arma de fuego en presencia de un agente del orden público. That's what peace officer is, agente del orden público. Exhibiting deadly weapon, false imprisonment, this is all self-explanatory. You don't have to study felon in possession of a firearm, so you can drop that one. Fictitious checks, forced entry, forgery, fraud. You don't have to study fraudulent bankruptcy. But all these are self-explanatory. Glue sniffing is inhalar pegamento. Many kids that they don't have the money to buy drugs, they sniff glue, and that's how they get high. Grand theft is hurto mayor, is when you take the property of someone else without that other person knowing, but the value of that property exceeds a certain amount of dollars. I think it's $600. Then it becomes grand theft. Because if it's below that amount, it's going to be petty theft. Hit and run is chocar y huir, and this assumes that you're hitting another car. It doesn't assume that you're hitting a person, right? Because when you hit a person with a car, we say atropellar a una persona. But in this case, it's one car hits the other car and then decides to leave the scene of the accident. Indecent exposure is exhibicionismo, and all it means is that you show your private parts in public. That's all there is to it. Joyriding es pasear en vehículo ajeno sin permiso del dueño. You don't have to study this one because that is not a crime in Latin America. And that's why we are kind of explaining it. Kidnapping es secuestro de personas. And then usually when you kidnap somebody, it's because you want something in return for that person. And that's called kidnapping for ransom, which is actually secuestro por rescate. Larceny is the same thing as theft. Lewd act with a child, acto lascivo con un menor. It means an act that it is of a sexual nature that you're doing with a minor. It's kind of a general meaning of it. There is some sex desires in terms of that activity with a child, with a minor. Loitering, vagar, malicious mischief. You don't have to study malicious mischief. Malice aforethought. You remember that aforethought was premeditación, but when we put malice aforethought is alevosía, because malice by itself means dolo, D-O-L-O, and that was one of the words that was used in the practice that we did before the break. And so premeditación con dolo en español se le conoce como alevosía. Quiere decir ¿Qué quiere decir con dolo? Quiere decir hacer algo con mala intención. So malice aforethought es hacer algo con mala intención en forma premeditada. All that in Spanish is abbreviated as alevosía. Manslaughter, homicidio culposo, is the same thing as involuntary manslaughter if you look at it, because there are basically voluntary manslaughter and involuntary manslaughter. Involuntary has the minimum punishment, which is homicidio culposo. And voluntary manslaughter has the highest one, which is homicidio simple. You're going to study that later. So when in court you say manslaughter, the court has to assume that you're referring to the type of manslaughter with the least punishment. You need to give the benefit of the doubt to the defendant. And that is going to be involuntary manslaughter. And that's why manslaughter translates the same way as involuntary, homicidio culposo. Mayhem es mutilar. Mutilar is to cut someone's hand or to cut a part of someone's body. Money laundering, blanqueo de capitales. You could also, most people say, can I say lavado de dinero? Well, lavado de dinero is the act of laundering money. The crime is known as blanqueo de capitales. So it's preferable if you use blanqueo de capitales. See, money laundering means that money is laundered. El blanqueo de capitales quiere decir que se lava dinero. Okay? We know murder in the first degree. Pandering, you don't have to study that term. Perjury, it's falsa declaración. Perjurio, when you say something, when you make a statement and you do that in a way that is false, and you know it's false, right? Petty theft, hurto menor, that has to do with the amount of the value of that property. And pimping, proxenetismo. Proxenetismo is when you have a person who administers 2 or 3 prostitutes and makes money out of the prostitutes. And that's called pimping, which is proxenetismo. Okay? Now, just to go over some basics here, okay, before we finish for the day. You do need to take a written exam, and that's going to be available this Saturday, October 8th, after 2 p.m., all right? Saturday, October 8th, until November 3rd. All you got to do is go to your website, to the site that you're in, and click on written exam. So let me show it to you what that means. Here is where is your website now? I got to find your website. I don't have the website. That's not good. Okay, so I'm going to access so I can show it to you. Okay, it's going to take a little longer, but I just want to make sure you understand how you can access, how you can, I want to make sure you complete all the steps, okay, because this is your first course and you're not familiar with all the steps. So when you access to your site, I'm going to lower this volume, okay? In order to take the written final exam, which you can do anytime after this Saturday, 2 p.m. until November 3rd, just click where it says take written exam, and you're going to see the written exam here. There is a link, you click on it, and the written exam begins. When you take your written examination, what's going to be in the written examination, by the way? Okay, so the written exam includes... I don't know why it goes here. Okay, so when you take the written exam, by the way, do not use the browser's back button. Please use the buttons at the bottom of the page that they are like this with the arrow up and arrow down, down and up. That allows you to move from one page to the other, okay? If you use the back button, it's going to kick you out. No worries, just access again, put your name, your email address, and continue from where you were working on the question that you were working when you were kicked out. What's going to be in your written examination? It's going to be the material from your class manual, lectures 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the 10 arraignments from the lab, from that script, okay? The final exam is timed. It gives you 3 hours. See, the state of California requires that I test you for 2 hours and 50 minutes minimum. And I actually test you for more than that, but it is, some of you will finish a little bit earlier, because if you, most people will finish in 1 hour and 45 minutes, but you have up to 3 hours. And then you have to add to that I said 1 hour and 45 minutes I have to test you. And you have to add to that the 50 minutes for the oral exam. So that's one step, okay? The next part that you need to keep in mind at all times is that you also, this class comes with an oral examination. And in order to schedule your oral exam, you can do that now. Click here where it says schedule final oral. And then you have different times. I noticed that some people already reserved time slot. I would strongly suggest you do that before this Saturday, because they are going to, they have a lot of students on Saturday, and they're going to take a lot of these times. So you can take and then the day of the final exam, just access the site, click on the monitoring button, right? Which is this button here, or just look at your email, the inbox, because I will send you, a direct link, usually either between 5 minutes before the time of your exam and 8 hours before the time. So I'm not sure. So once you take the final exam, then I'm going to give you your score for the written. I'm going to give you a score for the oral, and then I'm automatically going to send you a report card. And your next course begins on, let's see, where would that be? Okay, so we already discussed this too, so no need to look at it. So your next course begins on, here we go. Class schedule, it begins on November 9th. And I will remind you, I will let you know, the report card will tell you when and the name of the course and everything, okay, that you need to know, all right? Now, the next question and last question is, we really have a break from, let's say you take your exam next week, which will be October 12th, okay? Wednesday, October 12th, you take your final exam, the written. So you have until basically November 5th, if you pick that time to take the oral. So there's plenty of time. It's really 3 weeks or maybe even more. So what are you going to do during those 3.5 weeks or so? So let me tell you what you should do in your class, okay, in your website. Go to the lab. You have been working with arraignment, okay? I want you to do, okay, so write this down. So let's put it here as homework.